Now in the last part we built a chroot environment. Remember, a chroot is a change root. It's a very simple virtual machine. You change the root so that at that point inside chroot you have an operating system of your choice. Now we're going to build out that operating system to be able to allow it to boot and to wipe disks. It will then boot into the pre-execution environment from a USB, first off, and that will allow it to erase any disk connected to the system, and we'll be using the scripts that we developed in previous parts. So the first thing is, we're in the chroot environment now. The first thing to build out this environment is to run setup, and setup does a little bit of housekeeping. Key thing here is it removes the password from root, because we're gonna log in as root with no password and set the scripts off. A bit of housekeeping with apt.get. We're enlarging the scope for apt.get, and we're going to start installing utilities. Now, do actually install apt.utils. It's probably not necessary because that one contains a sort of apt.clear cache, which reduces the size of the image considerably. But all the rest you'll probably recognize. So there's the drivers, there's whiptail, which we need for the scripts, hdpalm, which actually does the erase, systemd, which starts up the system, including a terminal and logs in root, init, which basically kicks off systemd, and udev, which mounts USBs. Here's the bit that's going to log in root when the system starts. So when systemd starts the get teletype service, it will log in root. And finally, we're going to use start.shell, which is another script that I'll show you in a minute. And we're going to append that onto the end of root's login startup script, bashrc. So that's all that setup does. I'll just save it. So we now need to move it into chroot. Now, as I said, chroot is run by root. You're not allowed to sort of break out of it and can't get into it unless you are root. But to put things into it, we're going to have to become root. So open a window as root. Now I get this red stripe. We're going to have to go back here and copy setup and put it into chroot. Then inside chroot we should see it, and what remains to do now is to run it. As I say, setup's going to be in the comments, so you don't have to study it too much. And it takes a while, so I'll get back when it's finished. Okay, that's it finished. Now we're going to have to copy these files like start. Now that's going to have to go into the root home directory. So I'm going to do that as root. Copy that, go into chroot, and there's root's home directory, so we'll paste it there. Now notice we can't see the startup scripts unless you show the hidden files. So they are there. Okay, so that's that one. Then the other one is init. I'll just show you what that looks like. It's pretty trivial. Basically, init runs from the root of the file system and runs sbin init. Now, in some distributions this might not be necessary because it might run sbin init straight off. And if you have a look at sbin init, which you're welcome to do, you'll see that actually all it's doing is starting systemd. However, this is the way we're doing it at the moment, so go back here, copy that, and paste it into the root of chroot. Right, the final thing is to have a look and see what it's done. So in chroot boot, it's loaded the kernels. Now we don't need any of these actually in the image itself, because when it's on the USB, you know, it's the kernel is loaded separately. But we do need the kernel itself. So we're going to copy that and store it here. I'm also going to change the name, because we're just going to call it VM Linux Z. There we go. So that's the main thing it's done. Has find HD palm, which we're going to need for actually doing the arrays. So the chroot image is ready to go. So we're now going to build it, and to build it, I'm going to use build. Now notice it's moving aside, in other words taking out of chroot bits of the image that we really don't need when we're just erasing disks. The main thing is apt, that's a pretty big one, but it's moving some Linux drivers as well, that's sound and wireless. It then builds it by creating a zip file called initrd, and when it's finished it puts everything back so we can run apt-get again. So we'll run that, and we have to run that as root because it's there we go, and I'll come back when that's finished. Okay, now it's finished, we have a initrd file. So what we're going to do is update the USB that we created in part 8 and add the initrd and the kernel and boot it. Okay, so I've plugged in the USB, the bootable USB that we created in part 8, and we're going to put everything into wipe. So that's initrd, the Linux kernel, and we're going to also put in the scripts that we developed in the previous parts. Erase script is actually wipe 4. I'm going to republish that in the comments. That was wipe 4, now it's called erase. I called it erase script as being a bit more sensible. And the wipe drive is the bit that actually goes off and drives and erases the drive. The new part is menu, and menu uses whiptail, and you can erase, run a shell, and various other things. When you want to erase, it will actually run the erase script. So that's the menu. The menu is started by start.sh, which I didn't actually show you, so it's probably worth doing that. So so start.shell is going to try and mount the USB. Now in some distributions the USB might already be mounted, in which case this will just fail saying it's already mounted, but not always. And this will mount it into media.grub, and then it'll copy all the scripts from that wipe directory, and when it's finished copying, it'll unmount it so that you can take the USB out and wipe another system. When it's finished that, it runs the menu, which we'll see. So that's the USB. Now to eject it, eject the top partition. It's not the first partition, it's actually the second partition, if you remember. but eject that one. If you just eject that one, things go a bit gnarly, so that's it ejected, and we're ready to boot. So here's the grub boot menu, and you can see our new entry secure erase disk wipe utility. So we're going to run that. So it's now loading initrd into memory, and I'll pause the video while it does that. That took about 15 seconds. Okay, so there it is logging in as root, no password, and now it's started the menu. So that's ready to wipe.